Good morning. We warmly welcome you to and this summer especially warmly welcome you to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Vero Beach. We welcome those who are joining us online, those of you here in the sanctuary, and those who are still out in the narthex wondering what they're supposed to do next. This is an intentionally inclusive community, so regardless of sexual orientation, age, color, or predisposition, we welcome you to be here. And I would ask you to silence your phones as we begin. I'm Roger Ray. I'm a retired minister, one of many here in the congregation. I'm the pulpit host today, and we are welcoming Dr. Jeffrey Nall-Bradford. This is your first time to preach here, isn't it? So suspend your judgment and be gracious. I'd like to, at this time, invite you to greet those who are around you, especially to pay attention to someone that you don't know. And if you would just pretend, before you stand up, think for a moment of someone that you really need to forgive, and put it into that handshake with the stranger that you're greeting here, and make a conscious decision to show compassion and grace. Let us greet one another.
Please join me in reciting the words of today's chalice lighting. As we light this flame, we remember friends and loved ones near and far, and we give thanks. As the fire burns brightly, we open our minds and hearts to new ways of being, and we feel alive. As the room glows with warmth and kindness, we extend our circle ever wider to welcome those who want to come in, and we know love. May the light of our chalice remind us that this is a warm and free-thinking community which welcomes the free and responsible search for truth and meaning.
Please stand with your mind, body, and spirit. Sing our praises, but the journey pilgrim the Spirit, here we go. First verse, here we go. Sing our praises for the journey, pilgrims we the way on, searchers in the soul's deep yearnings, like our forebears in their time. We seek out the Spirit's wholeness in the endless human quest. Look inside your soul's unkindling of the hearth of pilgrims new. Find the Spirit always restless, find it in each mind and heart. Touch and hold the ancient yearning, kindling for a newfound truth. Stand we now upon the threshold, facing futures yet unknown. Hearth behind us, wayside hostel, built by those who knew one rose. Guard we ere their sacred embers, carried in our minds and hearts.
And now, a story for all ages. A 90-year-old story by Monroe Leaf, the story of Ferdinand. Once upon a time in Spain, there was a little bull and his name was Ferdinand. All the other bulls he lived with would run and jump and butt their heads together, but not Ferdinand. He liked to sit just quietly and smell the flowers. He had a favorite spot in the pasture under a cork tree. It was his favorite tree, and he would sit in its shade all day and smell the flowers. Sometimes his mother, who was a cow, would worry about him. She was afraid he would be lonesome all by himself. "Why don't you run and play with the other bulls and skip and butt your head?" she would say. But Ferdinand would shake his head. "I like it better here, where I can sit just quietly and smell the flowers." His mother saw that he was not lonesome, and because she was an understanding mother, even though she was a cow, she would just let him sit there and be happy. As the years went by, Ferdinand grew and grew until he was very big and strong. All the other bulls who had grown up with him in the same pasture would fight each other all day. They would butt each other and stick each other with their horns. What they wanted most of all was to be picked to fight at the bullfights at Madrid. But not Ferdinand. He still liked to sit quietly under the cork tree and smell the flowers. But one day, 5 men in very funny hats came to pick the biggest, fastest, roughest bull to fight in the bullfights in Madrid. All the other bulls ran around snorting and butting, leaping and jumping, so the men would think that they were very strong and fierce and pick them. Ferdinand knew they wouldn't pick him, and he didn't care. So he went out to his favorite cork tree to sit down. He didn't look where he was sitting, and instead of sitting on the nice cool grass in the shade, he sat on a bumblebee. Well, if you were a bumblebee and a bull sat on you, what would you do? You'd sting him. And that is just what this bee did to Ferdinand. Wow, did it hurt. Ferdinand jumped up with a snort. He ran puffing and snorting and butting and pawing the ground as if he were crazy. 5 men saw him, and they all shouted with joy. Here was the largest and fiercest bull of all, just the one for the bullfights in Madrid. They took him away for the bullfight day in a cart. What a day it was. Flags were flying, bands were playing, and all the lovely ladies in flowers in their hair. They had a parade in the bull ring. First came the banderilleros, the bullfighters, with long, sharp pins and ribbons on them to stick in the bull and make him mad. Next came the picadores, who rode skinny horses, and they had long spears to stick in the bull and make him even madder. Then came the matador, the proudest of all. He thought he was very handsome and bowed to the ladies. He had a red cape and a sword, and he was supposed to stick the bull last of all. Then came the bull, and you know who that was, don't you? Ferdinand. They called him Ferdinand the Fierce, and all the banderilleros were afraid of him, and the picadores were afraid of him, and the matador was scared stiff. Ferdinand ran to the middle of the ring, and everyone shouted and clapped because they thought he was going to fight fiercely and butt and snort and stick his horns around. But not Ferdinand. When he got to the middle of the ring, he saw the flowers and all the lovely ladies' hair, and he just sat down quietly and smelled. He wouldn't fight and be fierce no matter what they did. He just sat and smelled. And the banderilleros were mad, and the picadores were madder, and the matador was so mad he cried because he couldn't show off with his cape and his sword. So they had to take Ferdinand home. For all I know, he is sitting there, still under his favorite cork tree, smelling the flowers, just quietly. He's very happy. We now take a moment to light a candle for peace. We light this candle for peace in Ukraine, peace in Darfur, peace in Gaza, peace in the West Bank, peace throughout the Middle East. We light this candle to call for peace between states and within families, peace between all, peace in the hearts of all of us. But we light this candle not as an idle wish, but a declaration of conviction, of intention. Rather than hoping for or waiting on peace, we will forge peace with open hearts and steady hands. We will forge peace in the daily decisions of life, including those appearing deceptively insignificant. For we must know that peace is a journey of mindful action that is made each step of the way. So we come here together, each with our own joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. And before us, as you see, are vessels holding water, the very sustenance of life. Water carries, it nourishes, it cleanses, and it replenishes. You know, the Tao Te Ching reads that water excels in benefiting the myriad creatures without contending with them, and it settles where none would like to be. Water sustains life, often gently, yet potently, one drop at a time. Like water, we sustain one another through fellowship here, and through this ritual, we honor the sacred obligation to uplift each other in times of sadness, nourish each other in times of need, affirm each other with kindness and generosity, and replenish each other when our hearts are weary and worn. And so today, with this water, we are symbolically reminded of our sacred commitment, not only to all of us here, but to the greater whole of humanity. And so now we add salt to the water, acknowledging tears fallen and pain felt in the days since our last gathering. This reminds us to be tender with one another, aware that being human is difficult work for all of us. And some of us are now hurting, perhaps privately, perhaps silently. But even amidst pain, there is joy too. And so we add flower petals to affirm that joy and the beauty of life, the blossom of the plumeria, the cardinal song, a satisfying meal in good company, the smile of a stranger, the embrace of a friend, flowers that honor the ordinary acts of love given and also received. So in a moment, we will invite you to come forward and place a stone, as is our tradition, for a sorrow or joy into our collective bowl of care. First, we add 2 stones for the joys and sorrows of those who are joining us virtually, and we are glad that you are with us. And now those in the sanctuary who would like Roger to save you the trip all the way up here to the water, please raise your hand so that he can place a stone in the water on your behalf. I now invite everyone who wishes to share their joys and sorrows to come forward to place a stone in the water.
We will hum the first verse. So just hum at the beginning, and then we will sing together the first verse in unison. winds of compassion blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the land, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
May all that we offer to one another keep us connected and blessed within this hour and within the week ahead. May it be so. Amen.
Our fellowship recognizes that though everyone here is equal in dignity, equal in worth, that we are also not all equal in our economic ability to financially support the church. So without pressure or shame, we invite those who are able to do so to contribute to the fellowship. You can place your offering in an envelope in the pew rack in front of you and put it in the offering plate, or click on the QR code and donate that way. Today is also a sharing of sustenance Sunday, one of our social justice outreach efforts. On the second Sunday of each month, and I wish I could get that in my head, it's the second Sunday of each month that we should bring food items to donate to other causes, but also the loose cash offering that you put in the plate today supports the food pantry of Indian River County and our fellowship's monthly meals for persons in transitional housing. Non-perishable foods and toiletries that you brought today, or if you're like we and me, we'll bring it next week and put it in the office, are delivered to Fellsmere. With your support of the meals for persons in transitional housing, our fellowship team prepares and delivers meals to 3 transitional housing programs each month: Camp Haven, James Arthur Court, and Naomi's Place. These agencies provide formerly homeless persons, men and women, with interim housing. With gratitude and humility, we ask that we all participate. I just want to share one brief story with you. Clarence Darrow, famous attorney from the great monkey trial, very famous in his day. A lady that he succeeded in defending in a trial came up to him after the trial and said, "How can I ever thank you for what you did for me?" And without skipping a beat, he said, "Madam, when the Phoenicians invented money, there has been a very direct way to show gratitude." Our congregation, which is very important to me, and I hope it's important to you, is facing two real challenges this summer. One is hiring a professional music director at a professional salary. That's going to require us to dig deeper. As well, we have a roof that absolutely must be replaced, both of which are going to happen outside of the budget. So we and I made a large contribution to get the music fund kicked off, and then I found out about the roof issue, and I made the suggestion that those of us that are given honoraria for speaking here from time to time, at least give that back to the church. And I know we're going to, it's a couple $100,000 to replace a roof, and there's not that many of us, so it's going to take something big. But Jeff just told me that he's also donating his honorarium, and I don't mean that to be coercive. A lot of retired ministers never made very much money and need whatever honorariums they are given. But I just feel like this is my church, and I am grateful for what this church means to me. I'm grateful for our music program. I'm grateful that we and I were able to have a beautiful wedding here a couple of weeks ago in a facility that we were proud to share with our visitors from all around the country and indeed around the world in our case. So we want to hold it together. So I ask you to just feel how grateful you are and remind you that the Phoenicians have a great idea about how we can replace our roof and hire the staff that we need. The offering will now be received.
treated to some divine music this morning. So now I'd like to ask you to engage in what we may describe as a downright subversive act in the 21st century. To enter into a state of quiet and calm reflectiveness. I invite you to rest your limbs, perhaps your eyes. Most difficult of all, to concentrate your thoughts. I invite you to breathe in, hold that breath, slowly breathe out. As we calmly breathe, let us remember that life must be more than busyness for the sake of some distant aim, if it is to be meaningful. Breathe in, hold it, exhale. We realize that we must make time to be present, to be here, to breathe, to feel the exquisite life force within each and every one of us. Life force that animates our existence, that animates all of our existences. As we breathe in, holding that breath, let us consider the humble wisdom of that one Mr. Fred Rogers, who wrote, I realize that it isn't very fashionable to talk about some things as being holy. Nevertheless, if we ever want to rid ourselves of personal and corporate emptiness, brokenness, loneliness, and fear, we will have to allow ourselves room for that which we cannot see, hear, touch, or control. What is holy to you? What is sacred? Or simply put, what do you love in life, even as life is filled with hardship and sometimes pain? Beckoning us to make time for calming silence and deep penetrating questions like these, Mr. Rogers wrote, most of us have so few moments like this in our lives. There's noise everywhere. There are some places we can't even escape it. Television and radio are probably the worst culprits. They are very seductive. It's so tempting for some people to turn on the television set or radio when they first walk into a room or get in the car, to fill any space with noise. I wonder what some people are afraid might happen in the silence. Some of us have forgotten how nourishing silence can be. I think that kind of solitude goes by many names, Mr. Rogers added. It can be called meditation, deep relaxation, quiet time, or downtime. In some circles, it may even be criticized as daydreaming. Whatever it's called, it's a time away from outside stimulation, during which inner turbulence can settle, and we have a chance to become familiar with ourselves. How many times, Roger asks us, have you noticed it's the little quiet moments in the midst of life that seem to give the rest extra special meaning? May you find space in the days to come for such revolutionary moments of quiet reverence for life. Those that remind us life is not a race, but an opportunity to become and simply to be alive. Amen. I'd like to ask you to think about the last time you heard someone exclaim, "Now that is a man." What did that man look like? What was he doing? Chances are he wasn't wearing a red cardigan and talking about his feelings. We tend to recognize men as men when their muscles bulge and they're talking tough, when they're doing physical labor, when they're putting their lives at risk, when they're fighting on our side, of course. We see John Wayne, Clint Eastwood, Rocky Balboa, The Rock, Chris Hemsworth, and we think, now that's a man. In so doing, we fall victim to patriarchy's confirmation bias, whereby we only see men as truly manly when they exhibit a narrow and frankly damaging concept of manhood, one that diminishes the alternative, life-affirming models of manhood, exemplified by men like Fred Rogers. Now, as a boy, Fred Rogers was also misled by this model of manhood. He wrote that he had once believed that being, quote, strong meant having big muscles, great physical power, end quote. But over time, the boy who would become a pioneering children's programming creator, best known as Mr. Rogers, came to realize, quote, that real strength has much more to do with what is not seen. Real strength has to do with helping others, end quote. This was a vision of strength that Rogers went on to consistently convey and demonstrate through his more than 3-decade run on his half-hour children's show that so many of us know and have grown to love, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. But as you know, despite Mr. Rogers' very best efforts to guide American culture toward reconceiving human empowerment as centered on self-knowledge, emotional awareness, and love, the idea that strength means big muscles and physical dominance lives on in virtually every sphere of our society. This misunderstanding of strength is especially influential in misinforming widespread and deeply entrenched ideas about what it means to be a man. By returning to the insights of Mr. Rogers, along with that of feminist thinkers like Bell Hooks and life-affirming thinkers like Erich Fromm, we see that the door is not yet shut on rejecting patriarchy's dehumanizing vision of manhood, and affirming a truly humanizing vision of masculinity is still possible, and more than that, it is necessary. We see that our only chance at averting catastrophes of ascendant fascism, of perpetual militarism, of climate catastrophe, of economic exploitation, of genocide, of nuclear war, our only chance hangs on our success in reimagining a revolutionary manhood rooted in love as well as reason. Now, because when we look at our history, so many of our social ills are traceable to patriarchy, a word that we rarely even utter, yet is the very cause of so many of the maladies that plague our species. Patriarchy is 5,000 years of systematic presumption of supremacy of males over females, of love, of rather ego over love and over humanity. Now, as you know, patriarchy has left its mark. It has marred women's psyches and their bodies through all manners of abuse and denigration, from depriving them of the right to fully participate in self-governance, sports, public life, to have safety and security within their own bodies. Patriarchy has normalized the entitlement of men to control their lives, to physically reprimand them, and to exploit their labor, including their unique, if not divine power to create human beings. Patriarchy has also left its mark on men's psyches and bodies, leaving them in various states of alienation from full humanity, that sweet nectar of joyful living. To speak of patriarchy is not to speak of males or nature. Patriarchy is an ideology. It is not a biology. Patriarchy is the result of human invention, not biological determination. Patriarchy is not identical with men. It is a system of human relations that generally, but not in every single instance, privileges men over women. Women can be empowered in a patriarchal culture so long as they abide by the patriarchal system and root their authority and their power in patriarchal values of dominance and control and force in the service of hubris and hierarchy and materialism. Now, men have benefited generally from patriarchy's diminishment of women. But that benefit, that privilege, has come at the cost of nothing less than integrity. You have to be a true believer in patriarchy to think that men are only privileged and to think there's nothing to lose in that patriarchal privilege. In its purest form, patriarchy is just another word for rigid, hierarchical authoritarianism. Patriarchy's objective is exploitation of others for the benefit of an elite few. Patriarchy is actually the prototype of all exploitation, wrote Erich Fromm, not only of a class, but of one half of humanity by another. Adding that patriarchy is that human behavior by which a person uses another for his own purposes. End quote. A core commandment of patriarchal culture is that one must respect and obey those who project the greatest physical strength or capacity to dominate, to exercise the most economic or political force. Our worth under patriarchy, as so many of you sitting here today know in your body, under patriarchy, our worth, our right to respect is contingent on our usefulness to strong and dominant men, and yes, also sometimes women. To put it differently, patriarchy rejects the moral belief that human beings are intrinsically valuable, that they have dignity, as Mr. Rogers so eloquently and consistently reminded us through his work. Patriarchy says no. Your worth must be proven by your function. Viscerally speaking, patriarchy is another word for necrophilia. As Erich Fromm wrote in The Heart of Man, the necrophilous person is driven by the desire to transform the organic into the inorganic, to approach life mechanically, as if all living persons were things, all living processes, feelings, and thoughts transformed into things, memory rather than experience, having rather than being is what counts. The necrophilous person can relate to an object, a flower or a person, only if he possesses it. End quote. We could call patriarchal masculinity necrophilous masculinity, really, for patriarchy is the love of force. It is the love of domination. It is the love of manipulation. It is the love of mechanization. It is not the love of life. It is not the love of dynamism and reciprocity and growth. Under patriarchy, dignity must be earned. How is it earned? By being the right kind of man, by being the right kind of woman. And if you're not, you'll know it. You'll feel the shame that seemingly organically beckons you to embody an ancient and outdated model of manhood, one that you are not ever even part of deciding on, and yet you strive to embody it. Now, most human beings fit into one of two reproductive sexual categories, as you know. Males who have XY chromosomes and the primary sexual characteristic of testes, and females who have XX chromosomes and, of course, have ovaries. And what's interesting to me is that most of what animates our talk about men and women in our society has almost nothing to do with gonads and chromosomes at all. It's not about biology. It's about gender. People from left to right use words like sex and gender as if they are synonyms. Too few have caught up on the insight of the feminist thinkers in the 1970s who explained that patriarchy dresses up its ideological dictates for men and women in the garb of biological sex. and therefore biological determinism. The state wishes to have ready at hand warriors, so those in power can insist that God or king or nature have made it so that warfare is the fullest manifestation of manhood. Those in elite power require women to be reproductively prolific to populate their armies and exploited workforces. So they announce that God and king and nature have decided that motherhood is the singular fulfillment of complete womanhood, and that it is shameful to prevent pregnancies and sacrilegious to terminate them, in complete defiance of the existentialist credo that our lives are our own to define. Patriarchy declares men and women's essences are preconceived rather than up to them. All we are to do is obediently enact these strictly authored scripts of patriarchal manhood and womanhood. Just consider how successful patriarchy's gender ideology has been at convincing us something as seemingly simple or trivial that all the hair that grows universally on men and women's legs and under their arms is male hair, and that women, to be considered hygienic and beautiful, must shave it, or at least have the good manners to keep it hidden and out of sight. These kinds of societal beliefs and practices were absent until a company like Gillette realized it could manufacture a problem and it could also sell the solution in the early 1900s. That we continue to assign social practices such as wearing dresses, high heels, or makeup to people based on what? Their chromosomes, their gonads, their reproductive anatomy, proves how constrictive our thinking is and how confused we are when it comes to distinguishing biological sex from culturally determined gender. These rigidly socially prescribed gender roles based on gonads and genitals, they create social confusion and they create a lot of personal alienation. They leave people to feel that their biological sex does not align with their inner sense of self. And what a painful and difficult feeling the patriarchal worldview has burdened our brothers and sisters with, to insist that their anatomy, their mother-given bodies, oppose their identity, oppose their self-determination, oppose what? Their liberty. Well, some would have us believe that men and women are so different as to come from different planets. The radical feminists have long contended that we are all from the same species and the same planet, and that many of the differences we perceive between the sexes are but shadows on the wall of patriarchy's cave. A humanistic vision of men and women denounces presumptions about rightfulness or wrongfulness of behavior or interests based on sex, the same way we denounce presumptions about interests and behavior based on skin color and ethnicity. The humanistic view is that human beings are wondrously diverse and individual and ought to find or even invent themselves without external constraint. I think Mr. Rogers put it beautifully when he wrote, "Each person in the world is a unique human being, and each has unique human potential. One of the important tasks of growing is the discovery of this uniqueness, the discovery of who I am in each of us, of who I am in relation to all those whom I meet," end quote. Now, the men brave and daring enough to take a course with me when I teach my men's studies courses are soon challenged to interrogate male privilege and the often unrecognized toll that patriarchy takes on women. Students are asked to reflect on the validity and the applicability of unearned male privilege. Privilege is like being pretty sure when I walk down the street, nobody will yell at me about my body or tell me what they want to do with me sexually. Privilege is like knowing that if I choose not to have children, nobody will question my masculinity. Privileges like no one will think I'm selfish if I have children and a career. And in school, boys' sports were given more attention than girls' sports. There were cheerleaders for boys' teams. No cheerleaders from the men for the girls. At work, I can be fairly sure that I won't be sexually harassed. And so on and so on. Exploring these privileges, however, is only the beginning of the learning dialogue that goes on in a feminist-inspired men's classroom. The next set of questions tend to unsettle simplistic notions of the distribution of power and privilege. Perhaps they may unsettle some of you. I ask students to ponder questions like, have you or someone you know ever shamed or criticized a boy or a man for failing to live up to cultural expectations of manhood when it suited you? Have you ever criticized a man or boy for being too feminine, not being strong enough or assertive enough when it suited you? Have you ever uncritically presumed a man would take up a task that is stereotyped as specific to a man, though if the same were done and reversed to you as a woman, you would be appropriately outraged? How about this? Have you ever benefited from men striving to live up to these expectations? Be they laborers working through pain or injury, soldiers serving in military combat to fulfill expectations of proper manhood, of men doing dangerous, dirty, and physically demanding tasks. As a college professor, I can tell you right now that I benefit from men internalizing those ideas about themselves and doing much of the dirty and difficult work that I do not do. The fact that men have privilege does not mean that they have perfect privilege. Male privilege has long come with a fine print, one that we need to acknowledge if we want to get to the root and uproot patriarchy. Male worth is contingent on the capacity to control, if not outright, dominate, defeat, or even, at times, destroy others through force. And men's demonstration of dominance are to be done at the command of others, you notice, and silent yet forceful social expectations, rather than their own conscience. The objectification of men as violence objects is demonstrated by the fact that only males in our country are required to register for selective service in the United States. And if they don't, there's some hell to pay. Patriarchal culture does not encourage men to develop worth rooted in self-knowledge and loving relations. Instead, self-worth is anchored in being a tireless worker, one expected to prioritize their economic productivity above virtually every other concern imaginable. Patriarchy not only treats men as violence objects, but also as work objects. And while men generate enormous profits for those in privileged positions to profit from, their labor is often premised on a divestment from their own most important relationships. The compounding injustice is that achieving the cultural ideal of manhood is a virtual impossibility, since, as one sociologist puts it, most men in a capitalist society have little or no economic power. Patriarchal culture teaches men that their self-worth revolves around their economic function rather than their potential to others, to connect to others, to love, to deepen their own self-knowledge. They're too busy trying to be men, real men, you know. And these consequences are lethal. We should talk more about the fact that men make up 90% of the more than 5,000 annual workplace fatalities. 90%. Men pay incalculable existential costs for their social privilege. Do you know that boys and men commit 80% of all suicides in this country? Suicide is the second leading cause of death among boys and men aged 10 to 34. It's not much better at age 34 to 44 because it's the third leading killer. And it's the fourth leading cause of death among men aged 45 to 54. And for men who are 55 to 64, suicide is the eighth leading cause of death. Feminist thinker Bell Hooks wrote that males are the chief victims of patriarchal violence in that they are required to, quote, engage in acts of psychic self-mutilation that they kill off the emotional parts of themselves. If an individual is not successful in emotionally crippling himself, she wrote, he can count on patriarchal culture to enact rituals of power that will assault his self-esteem, end quote. And for all the privileges that men have, there are also quite a number of disadvantages that our society refuses to acknowledge. In 2024, men lived 5 years less than women. If that's privilege, I don't really know that we want it. But here's the thing, men do not need to renounce maleness to oppose patriarchy. They just need to reject patriarchy's dangerous and dehumanizing model of manhood. There has never been a single way to live life as a man. Our biological identity is simply the beginning of our stories, and the rest is actually up to us. When we allow patriarchy to tell the story of our bodies, we allow ourselves to be pitted against women and pitted against other men and pitted against ourselves. We allow fundamental human qualities like care and vulnerability and emotional expression to be coded as what? Feminine and therefore inferior? This is not only sexist, it is self-destructive. How many men do you know have to wait until they are older, until they are retired, to develop their relationships, to get to know themselves, to take time to think, who am I and what do I love and what do I care about? Men like Fred Rogers are evidence that men don't have to be work objects. They don't have to be violence objects. They don't have to hate women. And they don't have to hate other men. We can choose a masculinity rooted in the love of life, rooted in what Erich Fromm called biophilia. A person who fully loves life is attracted by the process of life and growth in all spheres. He prefers to construct rather than to retain. He's capable of wondering, and he prefers to see something new to the security of finding confirmation of the old. He loves the adventure of living more than he does certainty, end quote. Mr. Rogers taught millions that emotional intelligence was every bit as important as mathematics, scientific, and technological intelligence. He taught countless children that emotional sensitivity wasn't a weakness. It was one of our great divine human strengths. It was the genuine expression of human potency in a way that dominance and force and violence can never be, because in fact they are expressions of weakness. They are expressions of impotence, masquerading as power. Mr. Rogers' cause of subverting an equally ancient and destructive vision of power and replacing it with a life and love-affirming vision has, as you know, not taken hold in our nation. But you know what? It hasn't been abandoned. Today, the life-affirming manhood and humanity of the likes of Mr. Rogers is taken up in sometimes deceptively unassuming children's movies. Movies like How to Train Your Dragon. At the heart of the story, the protagonist, a Viking boy named Hiccup, tries to meet the conventional masculine expectations of his family and society. Despite his best efforts to be strong and intentionally violent, as is required in his society, he can't cut it. He's like Ferdinand. He just sucks in that respect. In fact, one of the best warriors in the film, as you soon discover, is a girl. Hiccup's empathy thwarts an easy chance to achieve a rare and glorious kill in the film, standing face to face with an elusive Night Fury dragon, which you see pictured here, one who is immobilized and vulnerable. Hiccup knows this is his chance to prove himself to his father, to his community, by killing the creature. Because boys and men are often taught that to prove themselves as men does in fact entail, if not the act of killing, at least the potential, at least the willingness to kill. Even the dragon knows it, closing his eyes, awaiting the death blow. But Hiccup's respect for life is too great, and his resolve to kill is too weak. Initially, Hiccup feels like a failure in this moment. In a society where violence is a revered form of labor, empathy is viewed like it's a disability. Hickup's sensitivity to life is viewed as antithetical to being a real man, someone capable of great strength and, of course, moral suppression. You know, Fred Rogers, who was not only a Presbyterian minister but a vegetarian, observed that most people tend to admire strength. Our mistake, he suggested, was in confusing strength with words like aggression and violence. According to Mr. Rogers, real strength is neither male nor female, but it is quite simply one of the finest characteristics that any human being can possess. End quote. In Hickup's world, strength is admired and conflated with domination, so his compassion is weakness. And our world, too, treats compassion and ethical sensitivity as a disability, doesn't it? Fred Rogers insightfully observed that we narrowly conceive of disabilities as inabilities of sight, hearing, or walking. This view prevents us from recognizing that while many are perfectly capable of seeing, hearing, and walking, they nevertheless suffer from significant emotional disabilities, but we don't call them that. Fred Rogers wrote, "But what if people who can't feel, or talk about their feelings, or manage their feelings in constructive ways? What if people who aren't able to form close and strong relationships, and people who cannot find fulfillment in their lives, or those who have lost hope, who live in disappointment and bitterness, and find in life no joy, no love? These, it seems to me, are the real disabilities," Fred Rogers said. Still striving to prove his manhood, Hiccup uses his newfound relationship with this dragon he names Toothless, which is interesting, to successfully advance in his society's coming-of-age dragon fighting program. He uses his knowledge of dragons, that they are sickened by eel, for example, to harmlessly repulse them in training, all while projecting violent mastery over the dragons. But Hiccup's subterfuge is soon discovered. He's revealed as a fraud. He's not a real warrior. A society that has placed its faith in dominance is not easily convinced of the power of connected knowing. Especially painful to Hiccup is the disappointment his father feels. The story reminds us that as much as boys may contend with their fathers, they are usually trying their best to prove themselves worthy of paternal love. Too often, this love is contingent on performance of a strong or outright violent masculinity. In Hiccup's case, a way of being that is incompatible with who he really is. What is often missed in discussions of cultural expectations of men and women is just how few of us actually fit into these small boxes. Those who fit in these boxes have usually sacrificed a great deal of integrity to feel worthy of love. I think one of Fred Rogers' most important contributions to our society was the persistent and faithful affirmation and the fundamental dignity of each human life, that we are all worthy of unqualified love and concern exactly as we are right now. He vigorously opposed the notion that our worth was contingent on our performance, on our usefulness. We can only imagine how much pain would be overcome if we structured our families and societies to honor the inherent dignity of all persons. We have never needed a Mr. Rogers more than today. Amidst the unthinking charge of technological progress, in the service of unthinking, egoic lust for profit, we need the succinct, humble wisdom of Mr. Rogers, who said, "Nobody else can live the life you live. And even though no human being is perfect, we always have the chance to bring what's unique about us to life," end quote. And what's more, we need to remind ourselves that Mr. Rogers reminds us that it's simply a lie that men are destined to live emotionally stilted, unreflective, egoic, sexist lives. And I will just close by giving you this small challenge. That the next time you see a man patiently communicating with a child, caringly listening to a friend, maybe courageously communicating his feelings or telling you his limits, refusing to put pride before integrity or his physical safety and health, or admitting that he isn't made of steel and actually may need your help. The next time you see or hear a man doing these kinds of things, I want you to say to yourself, and maybe even say to him, "That's a man. That's a man."
Our final hymn may be a new one for many of you, so I encourage you to look in your hymn book, if you read music, to page 334. Our accompanist will play it through one time, and then we will join in singing the first, second, and third verse. When shall we learn what should be clear as day? We cannot choose what we are free to love. We are created within from the world to suffer and with by its day by day. For through our lovely traffic all the day, in my own person I am forced to know how much must be forgotten out of love, how much must be forgiven even love. Or should we make a scarecrow of the day, loose ends and tremble of our common world, or else our changing flesh can never know. There must be sorrow if there can be love.
Be kind, be brave, be just, be merciful, be hopeful. This is how we keep the chalice flame burning until we are together again to light it anew. Amen.